Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, La ilaha illallah. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Walillahil hamd. Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillah, الذي علف بالإسلام بين قلوب المؤمنين وأوجب الاتحاد وحرم التفرق في كتابه المبين. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله هدى من يشاء إلى صراط مستقيم وأشهد أن سيدنا محمد رسول الله خير داع إلى طريق القويم. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه الذين تحببت نفوسهم وتهبت قلوبهم فكانوا سادة المنصورين. أما بعد فيا عباد الله أوصيكم ونفسي أولا بتقوى الله تعالى وتعالته. That is, all praise is due to Allah who has united the hearts of the believer in Islam and has made it an obligation to remain united and has made it forbidden to become separated in its clear book. I bear witness that there is nothing worthy of worship except Allah, who guides to the straight path whom he wills. And I bear witness that our leader Muhammad is his messenger and the best caller to the way that is straight. O Allah, send your prayers and your peace upon our leader Muhammad and upon his family and upon his companions whose hearts were united and whose souls were educated so that they became victorious leaders. And what follows thereafter, O believers of Allah, I advise you as well as I advise myself to first have the proper regard for Allah and thereafter be obedient to him. Dear believers, I greet you with the universal greetings of peace. Assalamu alaikum, which means peace be with you. Dear believers, I want to greet you with the celebratory greeting of the moment, Eid Mubarak. On this blessed day, we know that this is the Eid al-Adha, or the Eid of sacrifice, the celebration of sacrifice, the festival of sacrifice. And it commemorates the prophet Ibrahim and his son, the prophet Ishmael, this answering the call of their creator and being willing to follow through with what their creator had instructed. And we know that the Quran dealing with sacrifice, there's a verse that says, it says that it's not the meat or the blood that reaches Allah, but it is the piety. So it's saying that it wants to put these things in perspective, the perspective of what we're sacrificing, this physical thing. And it's not that we're sacrificing that physical thing, it's that God consciousness, it is that desire to please our creator, that piety, that righteousness that we have, that is important, that's going to reach Allah. So here, dear believers, we have the story of the prophet Abraham and the prophet Ishmael. And we know that this story has been told over and over. We know that it's been told in various faith traditions. We know this. So what we have here is the prophet Ibrahim was instructed to sacrifice his son. And he went to his son and he informed his son of what he was instructed to do. And the son, without question, responded in the affirmative that he was going to go with what his father's instructions, what his father was instructed to do. And so this shows us several things. One, it shows us the faith that the prophet Abraham had in his creator, the desire to fulfill the request or the commands of his creator. And this idea of sacrificing one's child is a serious thing. Sometimes ourselves, we're not commanded to sacrifice something so hard. We may be sometimes commanded to sacrifice a few minutes of the day to make prayer. Maybe during 29 and 30 days during the year, we're asked to sacrifice and fast. We're asked to sacrifice money sometimes to help the poor. Do we respond to the call the same way? So here, the prophet Abraham goes to his son Ishmael and tells him, now this son who received this instruction from an authority figure, one who was, I guess, had some understanding or basis in this idea of religion or nearness to God, information on the Creator, and without question he followed. Now we know to an extent that we should follow good information, but But we should maybe question now, since nobody living is the prophet Abraham. Some of these things, if someone brings us information, we maybe should verify it a little bit before we just jump up and go. But it shows us this relationship between father and son, between Abraham and Ishmael, and who the prophet Abraham was for the prophet Ishmael to accept what he was saying, that he had so much trust in him that he accepted what he's saying. So the question becomes, who are we as parents? Who are we as fathers? Will our family, will our community, will they follow us? Will they listen to us? Because we are a good example, and we are consistent in those actions. So that surah says it's not the meat or the blood that reaches Allah, but the piety. Do we have that piety? Because it's not that sacrifice, that action. Allah doesn't need that. So in this story, we know that they went to this hill, and he was going to sacrifice the prophet Ishmael, and then a goat or a lamb, whatever animal you want to call it, or using the story, was made available. That's what was ended up being sacrificed, and that's what we're commemorating today. This Eid al-Adha, this willingness to sacrifice the things of this world to please our Creator, the willingness to follow our Creator's instructions. And so this sacrifice of Abraham, of this lamb, goat, but the willingness to sacrifice his son, and then the son willingness to sacrifice his own life to fulfill the command of the Creator. So this is a beautiful story, dear believers, and one that we should really take to heart. It says it's not the meat of the blood that reaches Allah, but it's the piety. أقول كذا أستغفر لي ولكم والحمد لله رب العالمين. آمين. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. So now we want to look more into this prophet Abraham. Who was this person that was so near to Allah and so consistent in his actions that he asked his son that he was told his son he was going to sacrifice him because his Creator told him to do it, and the son was willing to do this. Now, don't run out there and think because you pray a few prayers, you do some dhikrs, that you can go ask your kids some crazy questions or ask people crazy questions talking about you heard a voice from God or God told you to do this. The Prophet Muhammad was the final prophet, not you. So if you go to somebody like that, they might try to lock you up. That's a little ridiculous. But who is this prophet Abraham? Who was this person? How did he get to be who he was? So there's this concept of this idea, the understanding of this Hanif nature. And we know Hanif is to be upright. There's Kama means upright, but Hanif is upright as well. But this Hanif nature is one that's upright, reaching into looking upwards to creation or to the Creator, this inclination to worship. So these are not going to be chronological stories, but it's going to give you an idea, perspective of the prophet Abraham and who he was to be the kind of person that his son would follow. That the monotheistic faith would look to as the founder or the father of monotheism. So we know that the prophet Abraham grew up in a society that worshiped idols, and his father was the main idol maker, was the idol maker of this town. And that's how they made their living. That's how they ate. That's how he fed his family. That's how he was able to afford things and feed the prophet Abraham. Was the funds that he made from making these idols that people would worship. And so this first the first concept to look at is man viewing man as the creator of something worthy of worship. So in this story, that's been told so much, the people were gone off and celebrating something, And they came, and while they were gone, the prophet Abraham came and smashed all the idols except for one, the biggest one. And he left the stick, he left whatever the item was on this big idol, and he left. And the people came back and they were angry. They were upset. They were like, all of our idols, all the things that we worship to, all the things that we pray to, that we feel are going to give us success and give us happiness, these things that you created, that man created, is no longer there. And so somebody said, yeah, we saw Abraham around here. And so they had the father go get him. And he brought him in, and they were like questioning him, quizzing. They were upset about these idols being smashed. And Abraham, with this Hanif nature, this upright nature, inclining to worship, he said, well, why don't you ask this biggest one? He asked the stick. And if he wasn't the one that did it, maybe he knows who did it. And so then these people begin to logic begin to set in. Logic begin to set in, and they realize that these idols, they said, you know, he can't talk. And so then that logic set in, that if he can't talk, why are we worshiping him? These idols that were smashed. So this is what this Hanif nature did. It made them inclined to now more of showing that man is not the creator. Man is not the sovereign. Man cannot create something that is to be worshipped that cannot benefit nor harm. So this was that first issue, this idea of man as the creator, being sovereign. So another story talks about where the prophet Abraham was going around and he was discussing this idea of monotheism, that God being one, that man cannot create these things that are worthy of worship. Like these idols mean nothing. And so he was brought to the king Nimrod. And the king Nimrod was a very egotistical man, full of himself. And when he was when Prophet Abraham was brought to him, and it was like, you're spreading this information, and the Prophet Abraham, part of his message was that, this God gives life and death. And King Nimrod said, well, I can give life and death. If I want somebody to live, I'll tell them don't kill. And if I want somebody to die, then I'll order them to be killed. So I give life and death. And so the prophet Abraham, he said that, well, my creator, the one that I worship, causes the sun to rise in the east and set in the west. Can you reverse the order? And so this question caused this Hanif nature, this idea, this thought, this inclination for worship to rise back up. To rise back up. And in this context, it's man worshiping man. Man viewing man as sovereign. Man viewing man as something worthy of worship. This Hanif nature, this inclination of inclining towards God consciousness, understanding who should be worshipped. And so this was the next story. And so after that, and these are not chronological stories, as I mentioned. There's a story of the prophet Abraham still trying to figure out who he should worship. It's not the idols that are created by man. It's not man's creation. It's not man himself. So now he looks to the stars. And it's like, oh man, that must be what I should worship. That must be my creator. Then here comes the moon, bigger, brighter. Okay, well, forget these stars. Let's look at this moon. This is what I should worship. A few hours pass and the sun comes, a big bright ball of fire. It's like, wow, this is a glorious thing. This is what I should worship. And as the day comes and the night comes back and the sun goes away, Prophet Abraham realizes that these can't be what I worship. Creation can't be what I worship, because it goes and it comes. It's not a constant. So this Hanif nature, this inclination to worship, led him to the conclusion that surely the one who created me shall guide me. And that's how the prophet Abraham lived his life, believing in what the creator said, that the creator was going to guide him. And the way that he lived his life based on the guidance of his creator is what caused his son Ishmael to be able to look at him and trust what he had to say, to follow him, to be willing to sacrifice himself because of how the prophet Ibrahim lived his life, the way the prophet Ibrahim recognized uh, the importance of following Creator, following Creator, but through this process of elimination by using his Hanif nature to find out, to accept who this Creator was, and then following the will of that Creator. So as we think about this Eid al-Adha, this festival of sacrifices, we go out and sacrifice. Remember that it's not the blood or the meat that reaches Allah, but it's the piety. It's that righteousness. It's that Hanif nature in you, that inclination to worship your Creator. That's what's going to reach Allah. That's what's going to benefit you. That's what's going to make your efforts a success. So we ask that Allah bless those who have gone and made the Hajj this year, those who made it to the Mount Arafat. We pray that all of their du'as and their prayers were accepted. We pray that those who fasted yesterday on the 9th of Dhul Hijjah, we pray that their fasts are accepted and their sins are forgiven for this year and the next year. We ask that Allah accepts our worship. We ask that Allah continues to bless us, and that as we go on and we celebrate today with our friends and our family and fellow believers, that we renew, we strengthen our piety. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم إن صلاتي ونسكي ومحياي ومماتي لله رب العالمين لا شريك له وبذلك أمرت وأنا أول المسلمين الحمد لله رب العالمين